So, and I wish more people would realize that they have many options. It's the hard thing and the simple thing is just having the courage to make that decision.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Iron Ring. I'm Alexandra, a civil engineering student. And today I'm actually joined by a very special co-host, Ilrick from Polytechnique, Montreal. So thank you so much for helping me co-host today on this episode.
Thank you, glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you. So feel free to tell us a bit about yourself, what you do.
So first, I completed a bachelor degree in industrial engineering at Laval University in Quebec. And then I decided to continue to push a bit further some reflection about the profession of engineering in Quebec. And then I joined Polytechnique Montréal for a master project, which is about the importance of soft skills in the I don't know how to say it, but I mean the importance of soft skills in the practice of engineering. And so I'm happy to be here today to talk to you and, make you think and make you reflect about the importance of these skills in your everyday life as a student and a future professional.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to have you on today to discuss those things for this specific topic. And as well, we have on our special guest today, Lesley Antoun. She has her own consulting and coaching firm. She is also the board of directors for La Société Les Ponts Jacques-Cartier Champlain. She is also board of directors for the Concordia Alumni Association as well as Wainbee. So thank you so much, Lesley, for being here today.
It's really a pleasure, Alexandra. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So we're really excited to kind of get into this conversation that we're going to have today. That being about the value of an engineering degree, what it can do for people. It's not very common knowledge what other things you can do outside of engineering specific positions. And then also talk a bit about the opportunities that people have with this engineering degree. Like I said, outside of the standard engineering job positions. And I think to really kind of start this conversation, it's, I guess, just to kind of give context. So a lot of engineers, people with engineering degrees or engineering professionals can actually hold jobs that aren't necessarily the typical designing a product or system or software or things like that. So for example, you might see them leading a supply management department or a marketing department or even being CEOs of companies. So I wanted to ask you, Lesley, why do we see engineers in these positions? Maybe even over, say, someone who has a supply management degree or a marketing degree. Why are employers choosing engineers over, say, those other people?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alexandra. Maybe I'll give a little bit of context by sharing with you my career path and my education. I graduated from Concordia's engineering program in 1995, which was quite a while ago. And I started my first job as a consulting engineer for a large engineering firm that supported industrial insurers. So I was out in the field, and I did that for about 5 years, traveling around and visiting various industrial and commercial facilities. It was really exciting. At the time, I got some visibility into the business aspects of all of these companies that I was visiting and learning about, and I became very curious. So I decided to do an MBA. So I did the MBA, and once I finished that MBA, I started working at Bombardier Aerospace and Product Strategy. And that was really where I got a chance to see how many varied roles engineers could occupy, because especially in a large company, engineers are present throughout the organization. I would say probably with the exception of finance. But there were engineers in marketing and supply chain, in engineering, obviously, in all departments. So it really opened my eyes to the fact that there were so many possibilities other than what I had initially thought my degree would bring me to. Now, your question about why is the engineering degree valuable? I think the critical thinking that is part of the program is so essential. And it's essential in all roles. And it's, just like social and communication skills are not necessarily taught as part of the engineering degree. Critical thinking skills to the level at which they're required for an engineering degree are not necessarily taught in other programs, maybe like marketing and communication. So I found that as I moved along in my career, and especially with the MBA, it complemented a lot of the skills that I had as an engineer with an engineering degree.
Yeah, definitely a good point is that I've heard a lot of people say that engineering is more of a way of thinking than it would necessarily be a career in of itself. So just the way, like you said, like how engineers are taught to think, we're not necessarily just know how to do physics and mathematical calculations and spew out solutions. We really, before you even get to those equations and calculations, you have to have that thinking. And it's not common knowledge, like we've been saying, that engineering, again, we are taught more than just the physics and mathematical concepts and theories. It's really just how are you going to think through this problem, and that can be applied, like you said, to almost anything, any other different kind of position. So through what I've seen, I absolutely agree, and I think it's important to note that it's, you learn more than just, I guess, the standard or stereotypical subjects that people might think.
And I'd like to know, back in the 1990s, how was the program designed for engineers? Was it more focused on hard skills, programming, mathematics and stuff? And was there a place for social skills or stuff? How does it look like? 'Cause she's studying Concordia right now, maybe 20 years later. And I'm wondering, is there a gap between the two? Is there evolution? Or?
Yeah, well, I hope so. Because I mean, in terms of programming, I learned Fortran, and I think it was 1 or 2 courses.
Really?
So that is, it wasn't really present in the engineering engineering curriculum, and everything was very much focused on theory. There were some practical courses, but not as much as I would have liked. I felt like I graduated with a lot of theoretical knowledge, but not a lot of practical skills for the workforce. Now, of course, working as an engineer for an infrastructure company versus for a consulting company versus for a mining company is totally different. It's different. And even within whatever department you work for, the skills are different. One of the things I really liked when I graduated was that the company that I was hired for, they had their own 6-week onboarding program, which taught you the specific engineering skills and knowledge that you needed to know to be able to do your job competently right out of the gate. So that was really an interesting thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that adds value to your experiences. And like you said, I mean, I guess, the 20-year difference, I feel too that we might be learning more theory than the practical, but I think we have evolved more in terms of what they are teaching students and what has become more practical to know in terms of skills, and they are emphasizing a lot on those soft skills now. It's really okay, we don't yes, we'd like you to be able to do some very efficient codes or efficient calculations and things, but you still need to have that those soft skills, like we said. There is being more emphasis is being put on that. And I see too a lot of students that I come across do struggle with gaining those soft skills. Okay, where do I go? Where do I access these resources to learn more about that kind of thing? But it is super important because I guess kind of like we're saying, if you want to branch out as well, the other positions that are out there do require those extra skills on top of it.
Yeah, and I think there are very, very few jobs nowadays where you can work by yourself at your desk. Most jobs, whether they be in engineering or finance or any other function, require collaboration. And that in and of itself requires a certain level of soft skills, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's really it is very highly valued from what I see from a lot of employers seeking out the engineers who have those kind of skills. But also I guess we've kind of discussed a bit why an engineering degree would be valuable. However, like I said, it's not really common knowledge that you can branch out to these certain places, let alone just talking about different engineering programs. That's not well known either. A lot of students feel like they don't really know what to go into. But on top of that, not what else they can do outside of engineering. So why do you believe then that if they are so highly valued, why aren't we promoting these kind of opportunities more? Why aren't we promoting this kind of branching out and mixing interests? If you're interested in different, I guess, like marketing and engineering, you can branch out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think representation matters. So, whenever there are opportunities to introduce engineering students or engineers to other areas where their skills and their knowledge would be valuable, those opportunities should be seized. Mm-hmm. So, if Concordia or any other university has events for engineering students, maybe it would be worthwhile to look a bit farther to see, to get guest speakers who are engineers, but not necessarily working in engineering today.
Yes.
Because it helps people to see where they can go eventually with their career. Mm-hmm. I also think there's a huge value in letting people figure things out for themselves. So someone who graduates from an engineering program and gets their first job, I don't know if anyone can expect to stay in the same job or would want to stay in the same job for the entirety of their career, which could span 40, 45 years, right? Mm-hmm. So I think people need to also sort of open their eyes and look around and find their own opportunities, make their own luck in a sense,
Yeah, absolutely. It is important to, yes, like, again, we should be representing or demonstrating to people these things more, but as well, people can also, we have access to resources that allow people to see these opportunities. And just for myself, I worked at CN a few years ago, and one of the directors there, has a mechanical engineering degree, but he's the director of the supply management department. Mm-hmm. So that right away showed me, okay, how did that happen? Where did that come from? And through I guess more research, talking to more people, you kind of you find out, well, actually, it's because he has his engineering knowledge, that he understands the products that are needed for railway and the products or the different resources that are needed and how to allot, I guess, the different funds for that or the financial resources for that. So that was it.
And those are all the hard elements, but remember that the soft elements have become very much the hard stuff, the part of the criteria, right?
Yeah.
So in addition to that, hopefully he also had good leadership skills and he honed those leadership skills over time and those communication skills. One of the things that is I see is a challenge and is lacking in some organizations is a focus on good communication skills. How do you communicate with people in different groups? How do you communicate within the organization at different hierarchical levels? What messages are you giving? The verbal and the nonverbal messages about what's important and so on. All of these things are really important.
Yeah.
You talked about the impact or the experience you had at Bombardier back then, and then you realized at that point that there was engineering skills, but there was other things also. And I'd like to know, what was the breakout point for you? What was the moment you said, wow, I'm missing something, and you decided to go back to McGill? What was the element you said, wow, I need something more?
Yeah. Well, I actually went back to school. I went to McGill for the MBA while I was still working as an engineering consultant, and then I went into Bombardier after. Okay. And it was the realization for me that I didn't want to do the job I loved my job. I didn't want to do it for the next 40 years. Yes. So what options did I have? I looked around in the company. There were very limited options except moving up the ranks sort of in the engineering functions. And so I said, if I want something more, I'm going to have to tool up. I'm going to have to get other tools and other skills. And so that's why I went to do the MBA. But it was also out of interest and curiosity. I would sit with general managers of sawmills and these people were responsible for so much more than I ever had visibility into. You know, they were responsible for the staff, unionized, non-unionized labor, all the policies, safety. They were responsible for production, for supply chain. They were responsible for everything, end to end, of what happened in that facility. And it was the same for any facility that I went to. So I like I said, I was curious. I was genuinely curious. And the MBA for me was the window into everything else from a managerial perspective that I would need to know to be able to move to other roles.
Yeah. And that's very popular now amongst engineers, is to go get your master's, and get an MBA. That's become really, really popular. And I think as time goes on, there becomes that value of having a bachelor's in engineering and an MBA. And I've seen that a lot of times, where people just, you know, sometimes they'll forego the master's in engineering and will just do something for business or anything like that. And it does sometimes give them a leverage at some point. So it is really common nowadays. That's even kind of the path I want to take as well. Is, you know, do a little bit of engineering once I graduate, kind of do what I can as I'm young. And then afterwards go get an MBA, and then maybe do something more entrepreneurial or something like that. Maybe start my own consulting firm or something. So that's kind
Sounds
of
familiar.
Yeah. Maybe you know someone who's done that.
I'm wondering, what was the dream job back then when you finished a bachelor degree in engineering? I know in my case right now, if you have a industrial engineering degree, you know, data analysis. Right now it's very popular. Every company is an industrial engineer doing some data analysis. And data analysis back in my time in 2015, it was just something you heard about, but now it's very popular. What was yours back then?
Well, I'll tell you. So I graduated in the 90s. So in the 90s, my dream job was a job. That was it. It was a job. The context was completely different. And out of our graduating class, we were over 100. We were 108. There were only 2 of us who graduated with a job. Wow. Some of us who graduated in the same year took a year and a half, 2 years to find their first engineering job. The context was completely different. So, you know, this idea of a dream job, I didn't have it. I wanted a job that was in engineering. Those were my criteria. Yeah. You know, and then everything else came with that. I mean, I ended up working for a good company who had that had good people policies, human resource policies. They had a great philosophy with respect to how they trained their employees and included everyone. You know, they had a shadowing program. So I really lucked out. I won the lottery in terms of my first job as an engineer, but I didn't have a dream job in mind. And that was also, I have to say, I mean, I'm a child of parents who immigrated from Egypt. You know, they came here with practically nothing, and they had a very strong work ethic. So this idea of, you know, you finding a job that you love, that wasn't something we grew up with. It's like you find a job to be able to support yourself and to be able to support your family eventually, not so that you can be fulfilled. Now we talk to our kids about, you know, finding work that you like. The context was completely different, right?
Yeah, for myself, it's really, I'm just, okay, what exactly do I want to do? Do I want to do water resource management, environmental, this and that? So it's really,
and also, as you said, for different working options, in my case, in industrial engineering right now, you can do some management, you can do some data analysis. You have many different options with a bachelor degree, which I was interested to know what was your situation back then. And it's
there was completely different. I'm sure, you know, in terms of what jobs were available, I'm sure there were just as many options available, or but there was no jobs. There were just no jobs. You know,
and like you said, the representation matters too. It's about showing people that actually, there are these different opportunities out there, and that's what I'm doing, and look what I've done, and things like that. So it does actually really is important to a lot of people to see that.
And the idea is not to mimic what I've done or what anyone else has done. It's the idea is to show you can write your own ticket. You know, you can write your own, as long as you have a commitment to lifelong learning. And you have great support, you can literally do whatever you want to do.
Yes, it is really important. And it has helped me, like I said, in choosing what I want to do or doing more research, and not, I guess, limiting myself. But with that being said, and kind of going more off of your experience and what you've done, what you've chosen to do with your degree, what helped you make that decision to start your own consulting firm over working for someone else?
Yeah, you know what? Ever since I worked for the engineering consulting firm and I had a chance to travel all around and meet different clients and hopefully help them in some way, I had always thought one day I would go back to consulting.
Yeah.
Bombardier was a great company to work for at the time I worked for it. I worked for Bombardier for over 16 years at Bombardier Transportation, which is now Alstom, and at Bombardier Aerospace, which is now, I guess it's one section of the Bombardier that I knew is still there.
Yeah.
It was like I said, it was a fantastic school. I made some great friends. I met some great colleagues, lots of people that I'm still in touch with today.
Wow.
At one point in my career, and every January I think about what am I doing and what am I going to do going forward for the next year. So that's just a regular process that my family and I go through. We figure out what has worked for us, what hasn't worked, what do we want to change going forward. So every January I'd kind of say, is this still working for us or not? And we'd have the discussion as a family. And in January 2016, I said, you know what? I really feel like now is the time for me to throw myself out there. First of all, I have a great network. I have a very supportive family. I felt like it was the time to be able to do that. And there's almost no decision that you make that's irreversible. So I knew that having built a great reputation at Bombardier, if it didn't work out, I could go back, or I could find another job somewhere else. It didn't feel like it was one path that would potentially lead to a dead end that was irreversible, So, and I wish more people would realize that they have many options. It's the hard thing and the simple thing is just having the courage to make that decision, understanding that obviously you have to have the proper, you have to have the proper support and financial ability to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a decision that I had been thinking about, and I decided. I just decided, and I did it.
An engineering degree is also very valuable in engineering itself, in engineering specific jobs. So having that engineering degree, you can go back to an engineering job or working in an engineering department, but taking the chance at least will allow you to explore more of those interests. A lot of times people do kind of have those dual interests, engineering and something else. So to be able to explore that is really nice.
It's very possible that there would have been no job. Let's say I wanted to go back, there would have been no jobs at that point in time, or the economy might have changed. I mean, I left at a point in time when the economy was booming, right? So the economy might have changed, as we saw it did in 2020 with the pandemic.
Yeah.
So there are risks, and the idea is to think it through. You don't want to make an emotional decision, but you don't want to be controlled by fear either, right? You need to think about what are the scenarios that could play out, and how are you going to deal with each of the scenarios? We have a lot more power than we think. We need to figure out how to use it wisely.
Yeah.
You mentioned along the way you met many different people, and then you had the opportunity. You build network, and I was wondering, was there anybody along the way that you remember of, or give you the courage, or told you, I think you have what you have? You got what it takes to do it.
So many people.
We talked a bit about mentorship. Was there somebody who guided you along the way, or?
Yeah. So, that's a great question. There were so many people who were there to guide me, even if they didn't say, I'm going to give you advice, but just by the way that they were doing things, and they were showing me things and talking to me about different things, and talking about me also. Showed me that there were a lot more options, and there are a lot more people that believe in you than you even realize.
Yes.
So for me, that was an incredible realization, and I only came to that realization maybe about 10 years ago, so just very recently. But yeah, there's plenty of people. I mean, I had many firsts at both at the engineering company and at Bombardier. So people that believed that I could do a job that I had no idea that I could do, or that I wouldn't have thought to put my name in a hat for, you know?
Yeah.
Like, for example, I was put into the position of Director of Business Development for the services division of what was Bombardier Transportation North America at the time. I mean, that wasn't something that I aspired to do. It was an opportunity that came up. And my boss at the time said, I think you could do this job. You'd be great. And I said, I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, you know, he said, could you just take it for a few months just to, because to fill the gap, we need somebody there.
Yeah.
And I took it and I loved it.
Wow.
So the other aspect is, you know, being open to opportunities, you know, that
Which
are
can
there.
look weird at the first sight.
Yeah.
Right.
Mixing engineering with sales, or mixing
Yes,
engineering with other
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. And actually having a chance to go out and see customers again, for me, that was incredible, right? It brought me back to my consulting days, my engineering consulting days. So I'd travel around. I mean, who doesn't like traveling around and meeting clients? And, and, you know, it was nice. It was a great job. That's just one example. There's just so many more along the way. So I think, you know, you might have an idea of what you want to do or what's a good job for you, but you also have to be open to opportunities that come up and be willing to try.
Yeah. And I do highly advocate for more mentorship, even within companies. I've seen a lot of companies, I've been really impressed to see that they actually have put into place mentorship programs for their employees. Not, you know, mentorship, you might think it's for younger people, put a younger person with an older person, but it doesn't have to be that way necessarily. It's just someone who's gone through a path that you haven't and can maybe inspire you in some way, and maybe push you where you wouldn't push yourself to go, and do those kind of things. Even for myself, last fall when I was working for the Jacques Cartier Bridge, my supervisor, she went above and beyond what her mandate for you know, having an intern. Usually for myself, I think, okay, the intern is just kind of the new person, and we'll give them tasks, but that's about all we do. But for her, it was she just pushed me, and I worked in the project management division, but she said, oh, you should try the engineering department, or go do this. I suggest you do more structural courses, or she would give me advice. So it's really, really important, I think, to emphasize more mentorship in these companies.
You know, I want to touch on that because it's interesting. This concept of companies setting up mentorship programs is something it's not new, but it's kind of new-ish. Ilrick, I want to get back to your question about mentors that I've had along the way.
Yeah.
You know, I still have mentors today. I still do, yes. There are these two incredible ladies. One of them graduated from Concordia's engineering program. I think it was called Loyola at the time when I was just a toddler.
Oh, okay.
So she graduated in the 70s. And another one of my other mentors, she is a woman who started up her own consulting practice 40 years ago when women didn't do that. Solo consulting, okay? So these two women I selected to be my mentors. I specifically selected them because they bring me something different. Each one of them brings me something different perspective. And interestingly enough, it just turned out, you know, the universe, the stars aligning or whatever, but it turns out, I didn't know it at the time, but they're actually friends. And I found out through, so now we'll go out, the three of us, and we'll have dinner a couple of times a year, and then meet each one of them individually for, you know, and it's interesting because they, even on the same questions that I have, or the same challenges I have, they have different perspectives, and they will argue those perspectives amongst themselves. And I come away with this really broad view of how different situations could be tackled. So they've helped me immensely, not only as I've started up my consulting career, but also in my personal life, some of the tough decisions that I've had to make, that we all have to make at different points in time, right? Some of the difficult conversations I've had to have with clients, with subcontractors. So it's so, mentorship is so valuable. It doesn't have to be structured in order to be valuable. Companies are offering it now. There's also tons of organizations that offer mentorship, like La Gouvernance au Féminin. is an organization that I volunteer with as a mentor.
Okay.
And I would say that being a mentor is I'm sure I get out as much, if not more out of it as my mentee does.
Yeah.
Because I learn things about myself, even in conversation with her.
You don't have to be the most inspirational person in the world or done the most amazing jobs in the world. It's really just talk about your experience so that someone else can learn about it. Maybe if they'd like to emulate it, or even just learn about it. And, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could do that. Or that's really inspiring. I think I want to do that one day. So it is, just having those discussions can be valuable in of itself too.
Yeah, it absolutely is, you know, and once you establish relationships with a mentor, what I have found is that these two incredible women see things I cannot see, which is, you know, I think it's normal when you have a strong relationship with someone, but they see areas where I could contribute more than I am. So that also helps me push my own envelope, you know, in terms of what I'm doing and what I plan to do, what my plans are for the next 5, 10, 15 years, you know?
Yeah. And I'd like to know what was one of the skills that maybe these ladies identified in you that you didn't know you have. And in my case, I decided to do a master's degree because many of my teachers said, oh, you know how to write. And I mean, you write well. And this is something we don't see often in engineering. So this soft skills of writing and communication, they told me you should push it through. What was the skills that identified in you? Is there one that pops out in your head and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. They told me I was good with clients or active listening. I don't know. Is there any skills they've identified for you?
Yeah. Well, I was told specifically that I'm very good at bringing people together, which I knew to a certain level, but hearing it from those women in particular really hit home. And then they have identified opportunities for me, not business opportunities, but like, for example, opportunities to develop my knowledge in cybersecurity. Okay. So, you know, I am, as you know, I told you in engineering, we did Fortran. Okay. I taught myself C++. I taught it to myself because I don't remember why, but I forgot it as soon as I learned it. But you know, I don't consider myself a tech savvy person. And yet to hear my mentor, who's in her late 60s, maybe early 70s, say you should learn about cybersecurity. It's really an exciting field. I attended this conference, and it would be valuable for you to know about that, not only for the boards on which you serve, but also for your consulting work, just to have a knowledge of it. And I thought, you know, I never had thought of that before. And I know I have the capabilities. I mean, God knows I've studied enough in my life. I have the capability to learn. So why not? So I did. I started attending seminars that deal with cybersecurity. ESG is another one.
Okay, yeah.
So, and I've naturally, through my consulting mandates, I've been exposed to it. And so pushing the envelope on what level of knowledge do I want to have for myself, and also to support the people with whom I work.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, because I think a lot of the times individuals can be very critical of themselves, so you don't see as much of the potential as I guess an outsider would. So for them to tell you something that you would have not seen just yourself, that can be extremely important, because then it teaches you your interests, and then also maybe where you'd like to go in your career. So I think that's really, really that's a good point, that it is important to have these people around you, or have those supports, or have those conversations with people who can bring out the best in you. And give you that confidence too to go do it.
And you mentioned interests. You know, over the past, I would say 5-6 years, I realized that my interest is not necessarily in a particular thing. My interest is really in serving, and serving well. And so whether it's as a board member, or as a consultant, or as a coach, what can I do to serve well? And so all of that is interesting to realize.
Exactly. It's nice to also hear that from professionals, that okay, I have something that's interesting that they think that I can go and pursue. So it's really nice to have that kind of support.
One of the things that really gets me when I think of your path is that you had the humility to go back to school after you've worked,
Yes.
to try and master new skills. And I was just wondering, maybe if you could just say, are you still learning today new skills, and how
First of all, for me, continuous learning is not optional. I know companies have taken this, we do continuous learning, but really as an individual, continuous learning in this day and age is not optional. When I went back to do the MBA, I had worked for almost 5 years. And I actually, when students talk to me today, I don't recommend going directly from a bachelor's of anything to a master's of anything. I think having that work experience is so valuable because it helps you figure out what are the realm of possibility. And maybe I think I want to do a master's in a particular topic, but actually maybe through working for a few years, I realized something else is of interest, And absolutely, Ilrick, I still today take courses. I'm going to be taking a course on April 14th on HR and Compensation Committee effectiveness. I've taken a course. I went back to the McGill Executive Institute and I took a course on strategy and execution.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
So that was, and despite the fact that I had done my MBA with a focus on strategy and finance, I figured that in the 20 years since I graduated from the MBA program, hopefully something had changed and thinking had evolved around strategy. And so I wanted to learn what was the latest thinking on it. I read a ton. I read so much, probably about an hour or more a day.
Wow.
And I listen to podcasts, of course. But yes, absolutely. I love learning. I think it's, like I said, I think it's a requirement for any professional or anyone really living in today's world. Things change so fast.
Yeah, I was going to say things have been changing exponentially for everyone. It's not just certain sectors anymore. It's really overall. I mean, especially with the fourth industrial revolution and everything that's going on, it affects everyone.
Right.
So it's good to learn about these things and okay, what's coming up? What should I be expecting? Maybe what skills are going to make me stand out in this kind of this new working environment. Especially too after COVID, there was a lot of adaptation that need to be had. And then learning, I guess, more, okay, what's the best things that we can do for employees now in terms of working from home, or things like that, just adapting to the environments. It's good to continuously be learning. Always push yourself to do those kind of things because, like we said, the world is evolving very quickly. So we need to be up there. Yeah.
And the ways that we did things 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, they're not the ways of today necessarily. No. I mean, we can pick and choose what elements we want to use. But, even today, I mean, I do a lot of strategy consulting work with teams and organizations. And the most common request I get, I often get a request, can you come in and do a SWOT analysis, a strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat, which is an analysis that I learned 20 years ago. And it's one tool in a huge toolkit. And I'll tell people, well, I won't come in and do a SWOT analysis. We'll come and do a strategy development process, and maybe a SWOT will be part of it, maybe not. And people are surprised. First of all, people that approach me are not used to hearing, no, I won't do something.
No, yeah.
And then to hear that what they know may be obsolete is quite shocking. Yeah, how could it be obsolete? Well, I mean, it's over 20 years old as a tool,
Exactly.
So there's lots of work has been done in the field of strategy and strategic planning in the past 20 some years. So.
Yeah. And then also there's been a difference in understanding people more between what's happened in the past few decades. We've come to understand more of different, different diversity concepts, terms, things like that, and how we can support these people more. So that needs to be done as well. So there has been just how can you taking care of your employees, and I even say as an engineer, how do you develop products for more diverse, consumers. So just following the times is very important to be able to, first of all, promote yourself more, but also to do, more beneficial work in what you're doing for the people that are using or consulting your yeah.
And I've been having so many discussions lately about representation. Representation matters. So especially when you're talking about product development and product strategy, representation really does matter, because I cannot imagine what it's like to be, for example, if we talk about diversity, I can't imagine what it's like to be neurodiverse because I'm not. I cannot imagine what it's like to be from any one underrepresented minority group because I belong to one group, and I can't speak for someone else. So that representation is really, really important at all levels of organizations.
Yeah, and it shows people more about, I guess, again, like what are the different diverse people out there, and how do we accommodate these people? And okay, we need someone who has that background to tell us how to accommodate these people and show us these different kinds of perspectives. So again, I guess bringing it back to the representation, it's really, really important. Again, like I said, not only for yourself to be able to know how to work with these kind of people, but also just if you're working for a company, you want to be able to develop the best things for the type of people who are consulting your company, or the type of people who are buying products for your company, from your company, and things like that. So
yeah, and I think so much of it is in a mindset, that we were raised with, or we grew up with, that was embedded in society. And again, talking about continuous learning, I have read an incredible amount related to anti-racism, related to the situations that Indigenous peoples here in Canada face. And so I think education and mindset is so important to even how we speak about diversity and how we tackle diversity, and how we demonstrate its importance and how we live it. It's really important.
It can be a personal benefit, but also an overall gain for an entire society. But I think just a little bit of like a fun question. What industry do engineers work in but you would never have thought they could work in, or something that's just so...
Banking.
Yeah.
But actually, one of the engineers that I met early in my career, she was a manager at RBC.
Okay.
And that was 25 years ago. And I just thought, how does an engineer become a manager at RBC? And it goes back to that critical thinking.
Okay.
And she had amazing people skills. And at the time, RBC had a management development program, and they really cast their net far and wide in terms of pulling in different people from different walks of life and with different experiences. And so that was a surprise to me. I didn't know there were any engineers at a bank.
Exactly. I mean, for myself, the only engineers I could see are maybe software engineers, but that's not the position she's taking up. It's a managerial position of a bank. You'd think maybe an economics or some sort of student from that walk of life would be there, but I do agree that is a very...
So that was interesting, because when I graduated with the MBA, and I was applying to different jobs, RBC actually came, and so the National Bank, they came to the MBA career fair. And I remember applying to jobs with those companies, thinking of this lady, and that, hey, you know what, if she can do it, and she really enjoyed her work. Ultimately, I decided not to go with them, to go with Bombardier instead. And
Wow.
Well, you talked about the example at the beginning of the episode, so it's fine.
No.
And I have just a little small question, maybe a funny question for you. But what was the soft skill you use the most, or the most important one you've developed over the years? Is there one that really stands out from you that everybody should try and work on? Is it?
Yes. And it's something that I still work on today. It's and it's the most common soft skill that I coach my clients on.
Okay.
It's the ability to convey a message in a clear and concise fashion. Engineers and so many other different people, for engineers, the details of their calculations or their thought process are very important. For everyone else, not so much. And especially when an engineer is in a room full of people who are listening, looking for something to hang on to in terms of a key message, all of those details, the technical details, although they're critical, and that engineer would not be able to come to a conclusion without having done all of that due diligence, they're critical for the engineer, but they're not critical for the audience. And so understanding, what do I want to convey to this group of people at this point in time? There's one thing I want to convey. What is that one thing? How am I going to convey it? And then just saying what you need to say and just being quiet and waiting for questions. People will ask questions based on their level of understanding, their interest, and their particular role. So someone who's in finance, someone who's in marketing, they will ask that engineer a different question based on their area of interest, their area of expertise. And the engineer can answer the specific question rather than dragging everyone through the very long discussion, which is interesting to other engineers. Not to take away from, I mean, I'm fascinated by some of these technical discussions when I'm sitting around the table, but I recognize that the place for those discussions is not around that table, right? So understanding, where am I? What do I need? Like, what table am I sitting at? What message do I need to convey? How can I convey it in a concise and clear fashion?
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes back to the entire subject of this episode, is having those skills to be able to speak to the different types of departments or department heads. Knowing that can be valuable, because if you understand what the marketing head wants to hear, you understand a part of marketing. And if you know what any other department, you have a knowledge for that. And it is extremely important for an engineer to be able to convey their ideas, because otherwise it can't be implemented if you don't have that communication. And communication is a really, really important life skill for anyone.
Absolutely. And the right communication at the right time.
Yes.
You know, I was coaching someone yesterday through a board presentation that she was preparing, and she's someone with a master's of engineering. Brilliant woman, and very much an expert in her field. And she's presenting to a board of directors who has no knowledge in the field. And so, you know, understanding that the purpose is not to educate them. The purpose is to tell them what they need to know as a board of directors. So the first thing was actually for her to understand, what is the role of the board? That's the first thing, because when she understands the role of the board, she can tailor her presentation and her messages to what their role is, what they care about. They don't care about all the technical details. Maybe they should, but they don't. That's not, you know, their role is fiduciary duty and support for senior executives and decision making. So, you know, how do you bubble up months of research and months of work into a 10-minute presentation for that audience?
And that's a skill in of itself.
Absolutely.
Just knowing how to do that.
And by the time we're done, we'll probably have spent 5 or 6 hours preparing for this 10-minute block. That's how important the communication is, because she doesn't get a second chance.
Yes.
Right.
It's one and done. Yeah, exactly.
It's one and done. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, no pressure on anyone, but those are the skills that make you stand out in the end.
And the practice matters. Practicing matters. And even now, I still practice. Before I meet a client, I'm prepared. I mean, I don't go in for a chat like we're doing today. I mean, you know, I prepare. What are my key messages? What if they ask me this question? What am I going to answer? You know?
And I like your answer, because the last question you asked, I would have said communication. I haven't seen in my experience engineers doing a lot of social medias or you know, talking with people in conferences and stuff. So usually you give that away, and then I think it's important. The podcast you do, the podcast I do. I mean, it's we're seeing engineers taking, you know, communication skills to another level, and I think it's pretty interesting.
And it's so important. And even you talk about networking at events. I mean, if it's fine if you're a bunch of an engineering event, and you know, I would love to talk to an engineer about, you know, the details of the finite element analysis that they do. But if you're at a different networking event, maybe that'll bore somebody to tears. I mean, you know, you need to you need to know
your
what
audience.
to say and why why am I talking? That's the question.
Yeah, that's now that I know, that's kind of what you're in for as an engineer. And even myself, I knew there was a diversity or versatility of an engineering degree, but right now as you're speaking, I'm understanding more kind of what's required of you in the end, because you are the one coming up with the ideas, you are the one designing these solutions. So how are you going to get that out there, and how are we going to design this plan that's going to implement it? We need the engineer to kind of talk us through this, but in a layperson way. That's not going to confuse everyone. And that can be an issue in itself. The communication, again, miscommunicating that can also be miscommunicated to the consumer and things like that. So, I wanted to ask, what would be one thing that you would like our audience or whoever's listening in today to take away from this conversation? Say you're speaking to someone studying engineering or someone who wants to learn about this subject. What is one thing that you'd like them to take away that you think is valuable to this discussion?
I think one thing that was clearly evident to me when I graduated is that the learning doesn't stop. It can't stop.
Yes.
Because you'll be obsolete. Your skills and your knowledge will be obsolete before you can say boo, Yeah. And even more so today, right? So the learning doesn't stop. So you need to figure out for yourself, how do you learn? How do you best learn? I know for myself, I learn really well through reading and then applying what I learn.
Yeah.
Some other people learn better in a classroom setting, in group setting. Some, different people learn differently, and it's figuring out what's the formula for you, because learning is a lifelong skill. Yeah. You need to continue learning.
Yeah, exactly. It's not only limited to school as one might think. It's actually a way of life and what you have to do. So.
And the other thing about learning is, don't limit yourself to learning about things that are in your field.
Yep.
The best thing I did for myself was learn about things that are not related to engineering, because then I was able to speak to people who are not engineers, right? Yeah. And able to grow my career much more broadly than I would have imagined coming out of school. So don't limit yourself in terms of your learning to what it is that you learned in undergrad.
Yeah. And I think that's a great wrap up to today's discussion and what we wanted to kind of get out there to our audience, and why engineering and an engineering degree can be so valuable. So thank you, Ilrick, for being here and helping me co-host. And thank you, Lesley, for being a part of this discussion, offering all your really great insights. And it's been a really, really great discussion. And thank you to our audience for tuning in today. And we'll see you on the next episode of The Iron Ring.
Thank you. Thank you so much.